Hi all, and welcome back to Fun Facts with CDS Education Consulting. Today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite grant writing hacks. Why not to overlook the budget section of your proposal, and why I think of strong budgeting as a hack in grant writing. So grant writing is a form of storytelling that generally follows a standard format. And when you think about it, the stories that we tell help others relate to our work. And if we don't include all the right information in our stories, we might either lose our audience's attention or confuse them about our intent behind our message. And grant writing is a form of storytelling that does exactly these things. It helps others to understand why they should support us, but it's really important that we include all of the right details, or else a funder might not understand why it's important to support us, how they can support us, or how specifically the dollars that they're giving are going to make an impact for our organizations. And so what I like to posit today is that the budget is actually a tool that is essential for storytelling when it comes to grants. Oftentimes, people think of a budget as kind of the last thing to do. They leave behind, they work really hard on the narrative, and then it's like, yeah, I guess I have these couple of things in my program that I can slap together to come up with a $20,000 budget or whatever it may be. The next kind of level above that is having some general sense of, breakdown and reasons why they're asking a specific funder for a general concept around a budget. For example, if it's a sports company, they might be more interested in supporting your athletic program than they would be in supporting your financial readiness program. It doesn't mean, though, that you're really telling them much about what you'd like to do through your budget just because you picked that topic. It really takes a little bit of digging deeper to write a strong budget that helps you to tell your story. Good budgets tell us where we are as an organization and also what we need to grow or to take our work to the next level. And this is why my grant hack of the day is to develop the budget for your program first. Do not start with that beautiful narrative if you don't know what exactly you're asking for. Plan to spend more time visioning, planning for your program and your budget than you actually do writing. Now, for organizations that do the same thing day in and day out, have been established for a long time, this might be a little bit more standard for you at this point. But for many of my clients that are newer, small to mid-size organizations, they're creating new programs. They're using programs differently, or they're thinking about how one funder fits in within their broader funding strategy. And because of it, it's so important to know, why am I reaching out to this specific funder, and how can I show them in my budget exactly why I need them to support me? And just as I said in the last slide, not only is it important for you to know what that ask is, but it's impossible for the funder to know what the ask is if you're not really clear and you're not really aligned in telling your story. To take a step back, though, I am not encouraging folks to just write a budget and write a strict narrative that only speaks to the items in that budget. What I am encouraging you to do is to tell your full story, starting with your mission, starting with your vision, starting with your values, and then go deeper to talk more about how that funder fits into the broader structure that you're describing. So if you are, I'm going to give this example a couple of times throughout the presentation, a youth organization for students with special needs, and you have a variety of programs, but for this particular grant, you're asking for supplies for your dance program. That doesn't mean you should just be talking about the dance program if you have a long track record of running 20 different programs of different topics, all for the same student population. You should still be telling that big picture story because it affirms who you are, your track record of success, and the rationale behind the overhead expenses and kind of the broader costs that you have. But it's really important that you leave space open for the funder to understand how the dollars that they insert into your organization will also help you to move forward to the next level. And so I like to think of each funder as a puzzle piece, and your programs as puzzle pieces as well. So if you think of your larger organization and your larger organization's budget, it encompasses many, many things. Your staffing, multiple programs, different expenses that relate to overhead, etc. And all of those things come together to create one picture that is your organization's operations. Similarly, with your budgets, you could think of your budget broken down as a subset of all of your programs, with all of your programs being puzzle pieces within them that come together to build your broader program. And within your program budget, each line item becomes another puzzle piece that goes into that larger puzzle, right? And so when we're talking about individual funders, they're a piece of your larger funding strategy. And it's important to show them, if the whole puzzle was your whole funding strategy, your whole budget, what piece of that puzzle are they specifically covering? And we're in particular talking about restricted grants here that have a very set purpose, but still doing some of this to a certain extent with restricted programs with unrestricted programs where a funder can give more broadly remains important, because no matter what you're putting forward, the funder's going to want to know approximately what the impact of their donation is going to be, and the grant budget is an essential place to communicate this. So I gave you 3 examples here of a strong budget, a less well-written budget, and a poorly written budget, just to show you how the details included in the budget can make a big difference about the program. Without writing any narrative here, look at the difference in what you learn about my program. So the first example is, I'm telling you, I'm writing a grant about a dance program for students with special needs, and I'm asking you as a funder to please cover 20 pairs of ballet shoes and 20% of my dance teacher's time. And I'm giving you specific figures related to that. So by looking at that, okay, you're going to be serving 20 students, and it's going to be costing a certain amount of overhead to be covering the time of the instructor, in addition to those direct costs that are going to support students. And I can tell that the per student cost is really a function of both the dance teacher's time and those ballet shoes, but I'm also understanding that every new student doesn't necessarily cost the program an additional, even percentage of that grant amount that I'm asking for. A lot of that time is driven by the salary of the dance teacher. Now, a less well-written budget still speaks to the number of students that your program will serve, and still includes a very detailed, specific number that you put in your budget for supporting the program. But it's much too broad by just saying you're going to serve 20 students at $510 a student. It's really not clear, what are you buying for those students with that amount? Is that all staff time? Are those all materials going to students directly? Are there things in there that are unallowable under the grants expenses? Say, for example, this foundation does not want to fund any food, like most federal grants don't fund any food, but you put $510 a student and you intend to use some of that for food. They're not going to know that, but they're not going to know that you're not doing that either. And then a poorly written grant budget really just says, well, it's a $10,000 grant or a $10,000 to $12,000 grant. I'm just going to put $10,000 in. I'm going to tell you about my program. I'm going to hope that you think I'm worthy of the grant, and that's going to be that. And in that scenario, you really don't know, other than it's a dance program for students with special needs, you have no idea, what this program even is. In fact, I take that back, because in this example, you don't even know who the target student population is by simply looking at the budget. Now, no one is going to ever just look at the budget. I'm not trying to make the case that funders are not looking at your application as a whole, but savvy grant reviewers are going to look at your budget in tandem with your application as opposed to something separate from your application. And in doing so, it's really important that they can understand by looking at each document individually what your ask is and why that's important. And so these are 3 questions that you can ask yourself to determine if you really have a clear budget and narrative. The first and most important is, are all of the items in my narrative directly referenced in my budget and vice versa? So if I put in that budget that I need 20 pairs of ballet shoes, but I didn't say anything about specifically funding the dance program as opposed to funding larger after-school activities, it's going to be really unclear to a funder why those costs are included in there, for example. A second question is, can the funder tell what I can do with their support that I wouldn't be able to do otherwise? So it's important for most funders to understand how their money is propelling you to the next level. What is it doing that's going to help you to move your work forward, and not just, put that money in the bank to sit on unless it's a very special circumstance that's funding an endowment, in which case you wouldn't be describing program costs in quite this way. Generally, funders want to know, if I put X dollars in, Y resources are going to come out of that and Z impact is going to happen as a result. So you need to ask yourself, based on the budget, can I tell that? And based on the narrative, can I tell that? And then in the cases that I've given, like the dance class, I included a lot of money in there for staffing and very little for actually materials and supplies that are going directly to students. And in this case, I would want to go back to my narrative and speak more to why that dance teacher time is so critical to this program. Because in answering this question, if I am asking for overhead, staffing, or other related costs, have I provided a clear rationale? It's so important because many funders really just want things that are directly tied to your participants, and many of us that work in nonprofits or schools have trouble kind of parceling those things out because overhead, staffing, etc. are essential to running our programs. But unless we tell that story well, folks might think, well, they're just trying to bloat their staff and it's actually not going to make an impact one way or another. I'd rather fund, 400 ballet shoes and no staffing time than I would 20 ballet shoes and 20% of a teacher. But if you tell the rationale for why the program could happen with their support and why the program might not happen without their support, then they're much more likely to cover those types of expenses, so long as they're allowable in general by the foundation. And so the major takeaway I want you to have today is that your budget is not just a means to an end for your grant application. It's not the leave behind. It's not that last thing that you tack on at the end, but it's instead an end in and of itself. And by that, I mean your budget does tell a story. It is a tool for funders to learn more about you. And so you should put every effort you can into really sharing the importance behind your budget and aligning your budget to your grant application itself and your larger program strategy of your organization. And so I'll leave you with this quote from our president, which says, "Don't tell me what you value. Show me your budget and I'll tell you what you value." And this, I think, hits on my points really well because it speaks to the importance of understanding that your budget itself is a tool for communicating a message about your values and the vision of your organization. So I encourage you to start there. It'll help you with planning. It'll make your application stronger, and many, many times it will save you time in the long run going back and forth to align your budget with your strategy, with your needs, and your overall operating costs. If you like this video, thank you so much. Please click the like below and share with your network. I can't wait to have more of these conversations with you, and as always, feel free to drop your questions below. Thank you.